Hello everyone, and in this video we are going to discuss a very resourceful opening from the black side. And this opening is usually played when your opponent with the white pieces responds with 1d4 or starts out the game with 1d4. So we are going to discuss how to react to it, and this opening is one of the most popular opening, one of the most resourceful opening to play against 1d4. And I think this opening is going to help you to improve your chess level skills and knowledge. So let's quickly jump into the game. So we have the game between Hammer versus Magnus Carlsen, and this game is played in the Norway Masters blitz. So yeah, it's a very good opening. It's a very good game, I would say. So with the white pieces, Hammer starts out the game with 1d4, and Magnus Carlsen playing with the black pieces, who is the world champion and who always goes for playing a very good opening. So definitely we can learn from it. So after d4, he replies with knight f6. Knight f6, we have c4, e6, knight f3. And generally in this position, many players decide to play d5. The reason is quite simple. You strike in the center, you want to put your bishop to e7 or perhaps bishop to g4. After knight c3, perhaps bishop g4, bishop d4 followed by castle, c6, b6, I don't know. But the main problem in this opening is the bishop on c8. It just remains back. That's the main problem. So we are going to solve that problem by playing b6. And Magnus Carlsen played it, and after b6, the idea is quite simple. Black wants to develop the bishop to b7, and it's quite kind of the most accurate square for the bishop. So after b6, white responds with g3. And this is the most principled move from the white side, because to basically challenge the bishop on b7, we put our bishop to g2. For example, if white continues simply by playing knight c3, we have bishop to b7. For example, bishop g5, we play bishop to b4, and after e3, for example, let's take castle, bishop to d3, we play h6, perhaps bishop h4. What's happening in this position is, if white tries to castle short in this position, the bishop on b7 is much better compared to the bishop on d3, which is looking at a complete empty diagonal, whereas the bishop is having some good scope to capture the knight on f3 and putting a serious pressure on the king's side. That's the reason g3 to challenge the bishop on b7 by playing bishop to g2. We have bishop b7, bishop g2, and g6 by Magnus. He wants to develop both the Fianchetto bishop. So we have short castle by white, bishop g7, we have knight to c3, and here we have knight to e4. So what's happening in this, what's the basic idea in this particular opening is, and first of all, this opening name is the Queen's Indian Defense. So after knight c3, black plays knight to e4. The reason is quite simple. Black wants to trade one pair of knights and then want to put his another knight from b8 to f6. That's the whole plan. So after knight e4, we have knight into e4 by white, or else black is going to capture the knight and going to destroy a pawn structure. That's the reason knight e4, bishop e4, bishop to g5, hitting the queen, queen c8. It looks kind of bad move, but it's completely fine move. It's a good move. Queen to d2, h6, first kicking out the bishop. Because if you try to castle in this position, bishop h6 and white is going to trade off the bishops. It's not a good thing for black. That's the reason first black kicks off the bishop and then decides to play d6. You can't castle in this position because you lose the h6 pawn. That's the reason d6. And the idea of this opening is you put your pawn to d6 and e6, then you put your knight to d7, and then finally you strike with e5. That's the whole idea. So after d6, we have rook to c1. White simply follows the development, the fundamentals of chess. Knight d7, rook e1, queen to b7, putting the queen on a good diagonal. b3, making a better pawn structure. And here we finally have g5 from the black side. It's a good move, kicking off the bishop, bishop e3. Because generally, if black would have castled, then perhaps white could have thought of capturing the pawn, giving a sacrifice. But as black king has not castled yet, it's useless to sacrifice any piece on g5. That's the reason bishop e3 is a kind of forced move, And now f5 by Magnus. Magnus is going all in with the pawns on the king side. Rook to d1, and here we have short castle. Bishop to f1 in this position. There are some thoughts what happens if white tries to play c5, because it looks one of the most tempting move, because like you can't capture the c5 pawn. Like if you take dc, white both the d and the c file is open, so perhaps it can cause some serious trouble to black. Like for example, knight c5, bishop c5, d5. Such a bad pawn structure, I would say. And I think perhaps white is comfortable. But after c5, black is going to come up with a good move, knight f6. Not doing anything about this, but keeping it like this as because if black tries to capture, you can then capture it back, and the pawn structure is completely fine for black. And black idea is simply to play rook c8, and black is having a fine position. And you can't even push because you simply lose the pawn on c6 by bishop into c6. So we basically have bishop to f1 in this position. The idea of hammer was, if black decides to capture the knight, pawn takes and queen take, white can play bishop to g2, hit the queen and the rook and get an exchange, and it is a good position for white. Though it's still unequal because black is having tremendous attack on the king side. But we have rook to e8 by Magnus Carlsen. Knight to e1, e5. We can already sense how white has gone completely passive, because black simply played g5 and f5, which was very attacking, which was a very aggressive idea. So after knight e1, we have e5. Finally, Magnus going in the center, d into e5. Because if you try to push the pawn, try to block the bishop, and on the next move, your idea is to play f3. But you are a bit late because of f4. Your piece gets trapped first. The bishop is having some squares to go back, and black is completely winning. That's the reason white decides to capture the pawn, because black idea is simply to play f4, trap the bishop. The pawn takes, knight takes. We have f3 in this position, trying to hit the bishop. Bishop c6, bishop d4, f4. Good move. You take. We have rook into f4 in the game. We have bishop to e3 back, rook to f7, bishop to f2, queen to c8. You can just see how Magnus is slowly and steadily taking control of the game, taking control of the light squares. Bishop to g3, queen to f5, putting more pieces on the king side, trying to attack the king. Knight to c2, queen into f3, a fantastic blow, I would say. Queen into f3. I was going to tell you to stop the video, but I just simply forgot. So yeah, e into f3, knight into f3 check, and the queen is attacked. And you basically, what Magnus Carlsen thought is, where it doesn't matter wherever white king goes, it's going to come with a discovered check. So we have king h1, knight into d2 check. It's a check, you can't capture the knight. Bishop came, bishop into, king into. Rook check, king goes back, knight to f3, knight to b4, because like it's already over. Black is 2-pawner, which is already very good for black to win the game. Rook to c2, rook to e7, knight to d5. We have a couple of moves. King move, pawn push, bishop, check, and so on the move number 40, Magnus checkmated hammer. Which is also a very strong grandmaster, having a rating of 2600 in the blitz. So it was a very good game. So this game basically gave us a complete idea how to play the Queen's Indian defense, and it's actually one of the best openings to play against a 1d4. Basically, one of the best openings to play against the Queen's Gambit, because in the Queen's Gambit, generally in the lower level, many players faces a problem of the bad bishop on c8. So you can simply develop the pawn to b6 before playing d5, and after bishop b7, you can slowly play even g6, bishop g7, knight here, and at the place of doing a short castle, you can simply kick the bishop slowly, and you can put your pawn to d6 like this, knight d7, queen d7, and then you can expand on the king side, and then you can decide to castle on the king small side, and slowly and steadily you can simply see how Magnus Carlsen simply slowly and steadily crushed his opponent, and yeah, and he actually finished the game with a nice sacrificing blow, queen into f3, and yeah, it was a fantastic game. So I hope guys that you have liked the video. If you have liked it, then and if you actually learned something new by watching the video, then make sure to like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new to our channel, because we are going to come up with these interesting videos like this. So I'm going to come up with these interesting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.